time. So thank you all for joining. This is a topic that I am really passionate about. And so there has been a lot of conversations that have been going on globally about the future of work. And more specifically, when we think about how to stay ahead in a job market right now, that feels like every single day it is changing. And that is because it is. There are constant changes that are going on. And so it really becomes, how do I make sure that from a job seeker standpoint, from an employee standpoint, that I can make sure I'm staying ahead of what is going on. And that's really what this conversation is about. So before I jump into what we're going to cover, most of you all know me, but I always like to just give a quick introduction as to why I am having this conversation and talking about this topic. I come from a background in recruiting. So my name is Erica Rivera, come from a background in recruiting where I recruited both at Indeed and at Google. I am now a career coach. I also am an advisor for Glassdoor. I also create a lot of content across different social media platforms as it relates to the job market, job searching, career advancement, career pivots. And so I am very passionate about educating people and helping people understand how to empower themselves to be the CEO of their careers, because we are in now a time and space where there is a lot that is going on. And so with that being said, I want to move into the next slide here and just talk to you a little bit about what is going on. So what's the current snapshot and the lay of the land? So I'm going to give a little bit of a backstory. So I'm going to start with the baseline of, let's talk about how we got to where we are today. Let's look at the current snapshot of what's going on in the market. Let's look at how companies are actually hiring. And then let's look at how you can actually be the CEO of your career and stay ahead in a market that is changing constantly. That is the agenda for today. So starting with the background story, how we got here. So basically we are in a space where we are now in an employer's market. Previously, back in 2020, 2021, it was very much a job seekers market. So you all may have noticed the shift if you had been applying at that time, or even a few years prior to that, where you could submit your application and you would have multiple interviews that would be scheduled, maybe updating your LinkedIn profile, and you would notice that you would get people reaching out to you for opportunities. But now there's a lot of conversations around how the market has shifted, and what has happened are a variety of things. So it's not just one specific thing that has shifted the market, but I was in recruiting during the time where I saw the impact of the market shifting when I was recruiting at Google. We actually went into, in 2022, a space where we completely paused on hiring. And the reason for that is because there were a lot of changes coming in the pipeline as it relates to companies that had hired and staffed up their teams during COVID, and recognizing that the market that they were anticipating, the economy that they were anticipating, did not come to fruition and was not going to come to fruition. So they had anticipated and made these big bets on a market that was not going to be the case. And so we saw companies start to scale back. So you may have noticed, and if you haven't, this is, there's data around this to support this statement, but companies started to scale back on hiring. And this really started to shift in early to mid 2022. And then we also started seeing a bigger shift happen late 2022, Q3 approximately, when ChatGPT rolled out. And that was the really big shift where we saw the market flip. So we saw companies start to scale back because they made big bets on an economy that they thought was going to happen and come to fruition based on COVID. COVID was showing that we were going to see a spike in our economy, so companies were hiring. Then they said, actually, no, we need to stop and pump the brakes. They started scaling back. ChatGPT came out in Q3 of 2022. That completely threw the whole entire globe for a loop. And so now, since 2022, what we have seen is that not just ChatGPT, but the whole topic and conversation around artificial intelligence and how artificial intelligence is changing the job market has really started to happen. And we're actually seeing the impact of that as well. And then outside of that, we are also seeing now, just with changes in our current administration. So I'm not getting into the politics of, and that's not a topic for today's conversation, but no matter where you sit on the political stance, our administration has brought about a lot of change this year. And because there's a lot of changes that have been taking place, a lot of policies that are being implemented, a lot of things that are just uncertain right now, companies are now saying, hey, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't feel confident in hiring as we were before. So we're now seeing companies again say, all right, well, we need to continue to hold tight. We need to make do with the resources that we have. We need to hire just based on attrition versus continuing to scale as they have been before. And when I say they, I'm speaking as a collective, and granted, this is going to look a little bit different based on certain industries and markets, but as a collective, this is the sentiment, is that we are seeing this shift that has taken place. So what that has become for job seekers in the job market is a lot of uncertainty as well, because the way companies are hiring now looks different, and the way companies are going to continue to hire is going to continue to look different. And this is where I want to just take a quick look at the market snapshot, which I have up on the screen here. So I pulled some data here from one of the largest global outplacement firms, really to showcase where we're at in 2025, just in the first half of the year. And in the first half of the year, what we are seeing is that companies are still continuing to scale back. And what we are seeing in terms of scaling back, the reasons that they're doing this looks different. For some industries, it's going to be around overhiring. So what we were talking about a moment ago, AI is a big one. This is a really big topic, and we're going to get a little bit more into that down the line here and talk about how you need to be looking at that for your own careers. But then we also have things like tariffs, automation, we have oil price swings. We also have now the policy, the administration. So there's a lot of variables right now that are happening within different industries that are creating this market where we are seeing companies be more frugal about how they approach hiring. They don't necessarily know if and when they are going to be able to hire. And so what that creates for people in the job market is that now we have a lot of really talented people in the job market, more than we have seen in a really long time. And so it then becomes, well, you are in the job market along with a lot of other really talented people, and how can I set myself apart in a market where it feels like I'm getting lost in the sea of a lot of really great talented people. And that's where we're going to get into that a bit more here in a few moments. But that is really the general sentiment around what's going on. We're seeing companies scale back. That's going to continue to be a theme. Companies are still going to continue to make cuts to try and streamline where they can. So you just have to know that going into new organizations, that most likely a lot of times with the way companies are hiring right now, they are hiring based on attrition, and there's a small percentage of companies that are hiring now based on scaling and growth. So it just looks different. But then in terms of companies and how they now are pulling the ripcord. So with companies internally, what's going on? So we started talking about this a moment ago, but I want to go into a little bit more of the weeds of the reasons why. So really the big one right now is AI and automation. So we have a lot of companies that are leaning into this idea of, hey, how can we use AI to streamline? How can we use AI to become more efficient? How can we use AI to ultimately, at the end of the day, save money? And there are countless studies and stats around this. A lot of the really large consulting firms like Deloitte, McKinsey, PwC are actually bringing this data to the light. And so there was actually a stat around this that showed 41% of executives globally are expecting headcount cuts and this is between now and 2030, where they're expecting to continue to see cuts being made because of AI. And so what that means in terms of AI for you, it is going to be around you understanding how it is being utilized in your respective fields and industries. And again, this will be something we get into a bit more, but that is going to be number one on the list there. Then we also have a few other variables here where we talk about capital crunch costs. So we're seeing higher interest rates that are coming into play, which is also impacting hiring. We're seeing that over hiring hangover. So especially with within the tech space, where companies hired and then now they're going downsizing, and what they call it is right sizing to get to the place where they are at capacity. We're seeing margin pressures. So we're also seeing that within fields like retail and healthcare, that labor costs are going up, but then demand and reimbursements are going down. So this is creating that bottleneck there as well in those fields and industry. We already talked about the energy transition. So major oil companies are now laying off due to low carbon projects. So we're seeing about 15 to 20% of the workforce getting laid off there. And then in spaces like regulatory and ESG, so compliance, DEI, budgets have been trimmed significantly. And this is where we need to start to lean in. So what we need to be looking at here then is if companies are pulling back, we need to understand not just why. So here's, the reasons, but we also need to understand how are they hiring. And so I want to get a little bit more into the how are they hiring part. But I just took a screenshot here for you all to see just some of the reasons between now and as of May of 2025, where some of the cuts are coming from. And there's, again, a variety of reasons, but it just helps to understand where this is stemming from. And for you, as you think about your respective fields and you think about the roles that you are in, really paying attention to what is going on in your industry. Because if you are in an industry where you do tend to see more cuts, where you tend to see that companies are focused on streamlining, then you want to make sure that you're positioning yourself to the best of your ability in companies, but also in roles, taking on work that is going to position you for longevity based on tying yourself to business priorities. So some can't control the outcome, and that is going to be, the inevitable part of this process. I got laid off in 2023. Nothing that I could have anticipated. I had exceeded expectations on all performance reviews, and I was still impacted by layoffs. And that was part of the big tech layoff where they were cutting because they had anticipated for a different economy and realized they need to scale back. So a lot of people are being impacted not due to performance reasons, but it's all of these other variables that are coming into play that people just need to be aware of. So going to the next slide here, if I can get to the next slide. There we go. Okay, so let's talk about companies and how they're hiring right now. This one is a really big topic of discussion. There's lots and lots and lots of information online, different people talking about this. So I'm going to give you my 2 cents based on what I am personally seeing in terms of the connections that I have through recruiters that I still know, being connected to Glassdoor and access to their data, being in conversations with people that I'm working with. So being able to compile this data alongside the research that I do day in and day out across different reputable resources to be able to kind of compile this information and say, hey, this is where I am seeing what is happening in each stage of the funnel. And I want to share that with you all so you all are aware. And that way you can start to make decisions if you are actively applying for job roles, just understanding what is going on. So when we think about the funnel stage, typically that breaks down into 4 core areas, which is going to be the job posting. So when they open the job, whether it be on their company job board or on LinkedIn, on Indeed, Glassdoor, etc., that's going to be the posting phase. Then we have the screening phase, which is normally going to be, for most companies now, their applicant tracking system. So you are submitting your application into some sort of applicant tracking system, which the one that is most widely recognized that most people know is Workday. There are other ones out there like Greenhouse, iSIMS, ADP, but Workday is the one that tends to be most widely recognized and used across the bulk of companies that are hiring. And then we go into the shortlisting phase. So that goes into where the hiring manager, the recruiter, HR team is shortlisting candidates to make hiring decisions, whether it be, hey, we're going to hire internally or we're going to move people to the interview process. And then finally, the interview phase. So when we think about job posting, a few stats that I just wanted to call out and share with you all is that for each job posting that is open on average, you will see and can anticipate to see about 250 applications. And when I say applications, these are viable applications. Not every application that is submitted is a viable application. There's a lot of reasons why job applications get rejected. And some of those being that maybe someone needs visa sponsorship and the company doesn't sponsor visa, or there's an education requirement that the person doesn't have, or sometimes people just abandon the application because some companies, to be honest, create these really lengthy applications that require you to submit videos and assessments, and people don't necessarily want to spend the time and energy doing all of that. So people will abandon applications, but typically you will see about 250 viable applications per role. And so the biggest thing when it comes to submitting your job application is really thinking about what are you applying to and being clear on what you are actually targeting. Because if you are applying to multiple different types of role profiles and you're not really paying attention and streamlining your resume to focus on a certain profile and target, you're going to see more rejections come through just because based on how the applicant tracking system works, a lot of these applicant tracking systems now are using more AI technology. And so that means that before you even get in front of someone, your application is going through a screening to see, do you have your contact information correct? Do you have the right keywords in your resume? Do you have dates with month and year? Do you have the job title that they're looking for? Is your education listed? There's a lot of different variables that companies can set criteria in how these applicant tracking systems can screen. And so a lot of companies now, approximately 87% of companies are using some sort of applicant tracking system. So that means that probably 8 times out of 10, you can expect that your application is going to go through an applicant tracking system. And so what that means for you is that when you think about your, again, resume, and next week I'm actually doing a resume workshop. So for anyone who's interested, feel free, if you're not part of the community already, to join the community, but that is on the calendar for next week. And we are specifically going to talk about job applications, resume writing for the applicant tracking system. But for the sake of this conversation, high level, basically for you in terms of resume writing, you want to make sure, again, that you are clear on what roles you are applying to, because if you're not tailoring that messaging towards the actual job roles that you are targeting, you are probably going to see more of your applications get rejected. But I do want to call out though, and just make this also very clear, is that only 2 to 3% of applicants, or applications I should say, actually make it to interview stage from cold applications. So there's a very small percentage of applications that actually translate into interviews. And so that's where I always tell people you do want to try to have a multi-channel approach in your application phase and not just strictly relying on submitting applications on company job boards into their ATS, because of the fact there's a small percentage of those applications that do translate into interviews, and there is data around that, and it is 2 to 3%. So that's just a side note there. But another thing to call out here is that companies right now, we're seeing a lot of companies that are prioritizing internal applicants, or if they're filling their roles internally. So you may have seen job roles that have been opened online, on LinkedIn, on Indeed, on Glassdoor, on ZipRecruiter, even on company job boards. and you may never hear anything from them, or it'll be months later and all of a sudden you're getting a rejection. Most likely what is happening is that what companies tend to do is they open jobs externally, but they already have someone internally in mind for the role. And we're seeing a lot of that come up right now. So you'll see job postings that are open, that keep being reposted. And what you're finding is that you're not hearing back from those companies. And so that tends to be a theme that we're seeing right now, is that what they call ghost jobs, where companies do that for three primary reasons. One is that they are legally they have to post that job posting externally. So if they have to legally post it externally, they do that so for the sake of compliance. The second reason is for pipeline building. So in recruiting, that just means they want to collect applications and have them on file. So that way, if they're hiring in the future, or maybe if there are other roles that this person could be a fit for, they have a basically kind of a network of applicants, a database of applicants that they can tap into for roles that they might have in the future. And then the last one is just for sheer appearance. So companies, when it comes to the market, their market value, being able to show that they are healthy, that they are strong, a lot of times they will show this through job postings. So they will post jobs publicly to give the appearance and the illusion that the company is actually hiring, that the company is doing well, that they're thriving, and that is not the case. So what I will say to this is that with job applications, if you're submitting job applications and you're not hearing anything back, or if you see that there are job postings that are open and then you are not, or you're seeing them reposted, or you are just seeing that they open and close, that's most likely a big thing that's coming up. And you're probably seeing some of that going on, is where they're filling these roles internally. And you're just seeing that they're trying to do one of those three things that I just outlined. And then the last thing here is just with interviews. The average cycle is 28 days for interviews, but the length of time in between interviews can vary. But that is just the average timeline that it does tend to take to get from the first interview ultimately to an offer in hand. So a few things that I just want to call out here when it comes to how companies are hiring and how you should be approaching that is that where you can, network is big. Like if you have people that you know that work for companies that you're interested in, if there are communities, professional groups that you can join, even Slack communities for the type of field or role that you're in, where you can learn about potential opportunities. LinkedIn has groups as well. I would recommend to part of your multi-channel approach be, yes, one, submit applications online, but two, you do need to spend some time investing to try and get people into your ecosystem. And I know that can be easier said than done, but it does pay off. And a lot of times when people are moving forward in hiring processes in this market, is they either know someone or they met someone and then they are bypassed through the screening process directly into the hands of the person that needs to see their resume. So that is a very big conversation that is going on right now. And again, in a couple of weeks, I will actually have a workshop on networking, because that tends to be a pain point for a lot of people as well. But then the other thing outside of that is your LinkedIn profile. So really optimizing your LinkedIn profile and really making sure that you're utilizing that, because LinkedIn, very much when we think about how it functions like an algorithm. It functions where it is very SEO, so search engine optimized heavy. And what you will see is that if you optimize your profile for the type of roles that you are targeting and you spend some time doing that, you will see people that will come to your profile, look at your profile, people that will reach out to you. But what you want is that LinkedIn to be pushing out your profile to the right audience. And that's what it'll do once you start to optimize your profiles. LinkedIn will push out your profile to the people that need to see it. But then for recruiters who are searching, you also want to make sure that they can actually find you. So that's the other component here. So those are just a few tips. Again, very high level. I have some follow-up workshops that are going to touch on those topics, but I just want to go through that so that way you all are aware of how companies essentially high level are thinking about hiring right now. Now going into how to stay ahead. So this is going to be where I want to just give you guys a few tips on how you can really think about being the CEO of your career. And the biggest thing is getting AI literate. That is going to be something that I am going to be talking a lot more about, because the more conversations that are coming up, the more articles that are being released, the more data that is being showcased. This is a big component of that, whether you are actively in the job market looking for jobs, or if you are currently employed right now. Being AI literate is going to be the way that you are going to be able to set yourself apart from others. And so we talk about how, and I don't know if you have heard this, where AI, there's this one side where people are saying, hey, AI is just going to come and take jobs away. On the other side, there's people that are saying, hey, AI is going to create new jobs. And then you have me in the middle here, where I say the people that know how to use and leverage AI are going to be the ones that continuously are able to set themselves apart in the market. So if you are leaning into what is trending now, which is going to be a long-term trend, they're forecasting 10, even 15 years down the line, this being the case, based on current data from the EEOC that just pulled the 10-year report. This is where you need to spend your time. And I'm going to give you a few specifics around this, but I do want to show you all just a quick, like 30-second video, because this, for me, really, I came across this, I think it was 2 days ago, and I was like, this speaks to why it is so important for people to really get AI literate. So I want to use this to kind of drive that point home. So I'm going to switch my screen. And
most of the time they encourage it just because it gets work done quicker. How you get there doesn't necessarily matter.
Does your boss know that you use AI at work?
I was the boss, so I did know.
Yeah, I feel like I'm pretty transparent about it because I don't use it that much.
We kind of encourage it.
I'm the boss. I'm actually in construction, so AI doesn't really apply too much in the field.
I believe they do because it's within our scope of technology.
Well, I believe everybody uses it on the phone, so it's like a private stuff.
Okay. Were y'all able to hear that okay? I hope so. Yes, okay, perfect. So I share that quick video because this is going on more and more and more, where we're hearing people ask the question of how is AI being used in your company, and you're hearing bosses say, yes, I know, I'm expecting my employees to use AI. Microsoft is just recently had a round of layoffs that they conducted, and one of their big elements in how they're evaluating people is on AI usage. How are they using it within their roles? And if they're not using it, that is actually held against them in their performance evaluations. And then likewise with companies like Salesforce, as well as Klarna, they are very much pushing and being very vocal about pushing AI, and they want their employees to use AI. They want to make sure that people understand that if they are not using it, because a lot of companies are now saying that they are an AI first company, then they are not going to keep those employees on board, or those are not going to be people that they hire. So if we think about the job market and you going into interviews, it is going to be important to think about if you're seeing in a job description where the company is talking about them being an AI first company, or if you are doing your research on the company and you're noticing that they are talking a lot about how they're leveraging AI, you want to be able to have examples ready about how you are leveraging it, how you have leveraged it, how you are leaning into it and upskilling yourself, because that is going to set you apart from other people. And then even internally, when we think about performance evaluations, that is also now going to be something that you want to be able to be ready to speak to. How are you using AI in the work that you do? So I have a few examples here, just high level real quick. I'm going to run through them, but just a few different functions. So in marketing, that could be that you're using it for like prompt-based ad testing, campaigns, audience clustering, if it's like more operations or administration. So it could be SOP creation, standard operating procedures, SOP, intake automation, meeting summary and notes. So finance for auditing, fraud, health, documentation, claims triage, education, now for adaptive content, for quiz generation. So there's different ways that companies across all industries, all type of roles are using artificial intelligence. And I'm sure that if you are not using it in your current role, or if you're not privy to how it's being used, you're probably using it and not realizing that your company is using it in some of the tools that you use internally. I want to share a few stats with you all before I give you some tips on just how you can start to lean more into the AI space here. So these stats I pulled specifically from PwC. So PwC, they year over year, they will do a global job barometer. So this is specifically for 2025, where they did their global AI job barometer. And so this really highlights and shows, in my personal opinion, how AI is really transforming at a global scale work. So we're seeing that 3 times here they have higher growth in revenue per worker in industries more exposed to AI. So companies are incentivized to use AI because they are seeing higher growth in revenue because they're cutting costs, they're saving money. So they're going to then, on the other side of it, then focus on how can they grow their revenue, being that they're able to, make cuts and streamline. So that's 3 times the amount. So for companies, that's a win. When we think about industries using AI, so 100% of industries are increasing AI usage. So this means that it is not specific industries. Industries across the board are using AI, and they're using it increasingly. And even industries that are less obviously exposed to AI are using it as well. And so the examples that they give here are mining and agriculture. So that goes to tell you again, this is something that is going to continue to be a theme that we want to pay attention to. And then when it comes to skills, so there we're seeing a 66% faster skill change in AI exposed jobs, which is up from 25% from last year. So we're now seeing that companies again are using more AI in their job roles and how they are changing the function of how roles used to perform, or now they're creating new job functions. So we're seeing that there's going to be more of a need for skills specifically around the AI space. And it's not going to be, let's become an AI engineer. It's going to be, how do I use it? How do I know how and understand how it's being leveraged? And that's what we want to pay attention to for y'all specifically. And then it's also changing in terms of like how it's automating jobs. So this is one of the fastest ways that they're implementing tools to automate job functions as well. And then when we think about wages, and this is a big one, so people, we all have bills to pay, and we all have, families in some way, shape, or form, or we have to take care of ourselves. We have our goals. But one of the things that we think about are wages. And so 56% here, it says wage premium for AI skills. So that means if you are showcasing that you understand AI and you are using it and you can demonstrate that, you are going to make more money. You are going to see higher offers. You are going to see higher increase in performance reviews when you think about the percentage that you receive in your performance evaluations versus someone who does not. And that is up from 25% just last year. And that's going to continue to increase. So when we think about the collective here of all these stats, so what we know is that being used across all industries, we know that from a skill standpoint, these are skills, when you think about how to use AI, these are skills that are going to be highly desirable and continue to be so. And because of that, if you're leaning in, you inevitably, most likely, are going to be making more money as well. So those are kind of the key, areas for me that stand out when I think about career, and why I think that this is important to all of you to just know and understand. So now a few things that I just want to call out is like, apply this. So some of you all may be using AI, and you might be using it in your current job roles, which is great if you are. If you are not, I would encourage you to get curious, and I would encourage you to ask questions, whether it be to your manager or other team members, just to understand if AI is being used, like what tools are AI powered. And you probably are going to find those tools in your organization. And for those of you who are currently actively in the job market and not working at this time, but you are trying to stay ahead of the trends of what's going on, I would just encourage you to pick a tool, and that could be ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, Notion AI. Find a tool where you can actually use it, whether it be on a real deliverable at work, or if you are not using it in work, like just testing it out and seeing how you can use it, and maybe in theory how you would use it in your role if you were currently employed for a company right now. And so just giving you some hands-on experience in being able to create a deliverable where you can track, and really with the tracking, you want to track and pay attention to the savings, like the time saved, the hours saved, because that is what companies are paying attention to a lot of times with how they are wanting to see people use artificial intelligence. Is tell me not just that you've used it, but how have you used it on a deliverable and been able to save time or have been able to improve a process. And that, if you can showcase that and you can speak to that, that is going to be powerful, and that is going to help you stand out. So that's something that I would just encourage you to think about now. And so one, I just have like a bullet point from someone who actually had this in their resume where they included it. They reduced report turnaround time by 3 hours per week using ChatGPT, specifically for draft modeling and then stakeholder summaries. So they were able to name the tool that they used. They were able to name what the outcome was. So the business outcome was saving 3 hours per week by using that tool, and they were able to say how, what was the tool used for. So if you can start to name it and talk about that specifically, that is going to, again, help you set yourself apart, make you more marketable, whether it be looking for a job, going into interviews, or if you are currently in role and you are tracking the work that you are doing, make this be one of those areas that you're paying attention to. All right, so upskilling. This part, I want to just give you a few kind of key areas where we're seeing what I would call is like high ROI, so high return on investment areas. So these 3 areas are going to be, I would say, probably the areas that you want to pay attention to in terms of how you are leveraging, excuse me, AI specifically. So one is going to be in workflow integration. So we just talked about like reducing hours, touch points, which then translates into cost. If you're not sure, or if you're not currently in a role and you're not sure, like how can I create a deliverable, Coursera actually has a really great training on prompt engineering for business. So I would recommend checking that out if you're not sure how you can showcase that, but at least upskilling yourself in the sense of training also is really good too, because it shows that professional development. So that would be a course that I would focus on. And then when it comes to data storytelling, no matter what role you're in, what industry, this is going to be something that comes up time and time again. If you are able to understand the data based on your organization, you're able to leverage that data to tell a story to influence decision making. That in itself is a skill, but it's even more so a skill when you can use AI technology to be able to help you streamline that data extraction or that data storytelling process, or maybe you're using it to help you create presentations. So there's a tool called Gamma, which actually you can just plug in information and it creates these presentations. So how are you streamlining your workflow? But that data storytelling piece is going to be an area that is really high ROI and an area that I would highly recommend investing in. Just whether you're employed or not, this is an area that is really, really, really important and will continue to be. And then in terms of training, so Maven has like storytelling with data, or through Data Camp, they have trainings as well, so you could check those out. And then the last one is going to be more around the change enablement side. So this more so is going to be, I would say, and classify this as like in role, you become the person who makes new systems stick. So if you're able to identify those opportunities where you can say, hey, we can streamline this workflow, we can automate this, hey, I've been testing out this tool, this is what it's doing for me, how do we leverage this across the team, and showing that as an opportunity to show that change enablement, that you are the one that's paying attention to kind of what's going on in those areas of opportunity within the work that you do, that skill and being able to really lean into that is a high ROI area, and an area that I would personally think about just, leaning into again as well. And if you're not sure about like more of the change enablement side of things, Prosgate has a foundation certification, and McKinsey also has some free tools as well. I'm going to actually put some of that information into the community with some of those links, so that way people can check those out if they want to afterwards. But again, just thinking about why these three. These are ones that keep showing up when we think about job descriptions, when you're evaluating what companies are looking for, when you're not currently working for the organization or in role. A lot of it is going to be around job descriptions or talking to people that work in the industry or work for the company or work in the role that you're trying to land. But the job descriptions you'll see, if you look at enough job descriptions across your role type, that you will see trends and you will see themes across what they are asking for. So they will tell you what skills, what tools that they're using. And that's what I would encourage you all, even if you're not actively looking for a job right now, just to calibrate yourself on what is coming up. What do I see coming up consistently across these different job descriptions that I need to be paying attention to? And so an example that comes to mind, and I think Kanita, you're in here, but in marketing right now, a big tool that they keep asking for is Marketo. And Oliver, I think you're in here too. So Marketo is a big tool that keeps coming up. And so that's something that's coming up consistently across different job descriptions. That tells you that's an area that you want to make sure that you're investing in, whether it be hands-on experience or whether it be you use YouTube University and take some trainings, or if there is an opportunity to use the tool. So some tools are available in the market where you don't have to be working for a company to have access to that tool. So maybe like project management, like a Trello board. So you can actually sign up for Trello and you can use the technology. So just pay attention to what's coming up and what you might need to be able to start to plan in terms of upskilling to stay relevant in the job market. And this is going to be something for these three skills specifically. Going back to the focus here, is these are ones that keep coming up repeatedly, which is why I have labeled these specifically as high ROI areas. And these are ones that I would absolutely think about investing in if these are areas that you're not currently investing in or familiar with, or don't feel confident in. This would be a good starting point. And then the last thing here, just going back to PwC. So PwC actually pulled some data around professionals that are using these specific skills, saw wages grow 2 times faster than their peers. So just tying it back to something tangible for you all. And this is pulled, again, based on PwC's pulling some data around this specific topic. And then the last few points here that I want to call out and just talk about outside of this is I do want to call out the show versus the tell, and I want to demonstrate the how. I know I talked about that a second ago, but I just really want this to land, which is why I created a slide dedicated to this. Companies care about you showing them. If you say I have knowledge of this tool, that's fine, but show them. If you can show them, that is going to set you apart. So when we think about what type of formula you can use for that, I typically will tell people, think about the impact, the problem, and the tool or the decision used. And so the example that I have here is somebody who in their resume stated that they reduced report prep time by 40% by automating Excel to PowerPoint process, freeing up 18 hours per month for stakeholder strategy reviews. So that's clearly talking about the impact, but also showcasing the problem and then the tools and the decision in this one bullet point. So if you can showcase not just, or tell them not just that you have this experience, but show them how you're actually doing this, how it's relevant, that every single time is going to make you stand out, because companies, what they care about not just your scope of role, but they care about the scale that you're operating and the impact that you're having, and that you're able to problem solve, you're able to find opportunities, and you're able to make decisions that are directly tied to business, either business savings, business growth, or business priorities. And so thinking about how you can tie it into the business should always be first priority in your mind. And so this, I just want to leave you with as just kind of the final note to wrap up our discussion on the topic of the skills, specifically in the high ROI areas. So a couple of other things here, just when we think about interviews. So I talked about more on the internal side, but in interviews, if you're not sure of like how you should show your AI fluency in interviews, and I put without sounding like ChatGPT, because that does come up as like a concern when I talk to people. It's like, well, I want to talk about this, but how do I do it where it sounds like me and it doesn't sound like I'm creating, you know, these generic answers? You just have to show them that you are able to use the technology. So again, how did you use it? I used Claude to prep a policy draft. It wasn't perfect, but it cut out 2 hours of drafting time, created a ready review document for my VP faster than expected. So this is very like not kind of like resume bullet point, but this is more of a natural, organic way to say, look, this is the tool that I use, this is how I used it, this is what the impact was from it, and this is who it was for. This was for the VP, because then it ties it to the business, to the stakeholder, and that is a really just simple way to address it and answer it. And if you guys have any questions around the how, like how should you present that in your own situations if you're going into interviews, I do have office hours that you guys can hop into, and I'd be happy to talk about it with any of you. Oops, I skipped a slide. Two final notes. So 2 final notes, and then I want to leave a few minutes for questions. One big thing I will encourage you to do, and for some people this might feel a little bit cringe, but I'm going to say it anyways because this is that important. Building in public, being visible, is going to be something that I personally would recommend. And granted, that is going to, level of comfort is going to look different for everyone. But if you are able to spend some time on LinkedIn, and it doesn't have to be I'm on LinkedIn every day, it can be a once a week, it could be a once every other week. But if you're able to start showing visibly on LinkedIn, if that's the platform that you're on, or it could be another, you know, social media platform. But I say LinkedIn because LinkedIn, when we think about companies and hiring managers, recruiters typically are going to your LinkedIn profile. So normally they're going to look at your resume and then they're going to go to your LinkedIn profile. So to me, in my mind, it makes most sense. Like leverage that as your kind of like your website, your billboard, where you're showing an extension of your resume through your LinkedIn profile. And you may not have a lot of like followers or connections, that's fine. Like people can still find you. People can still see that content if you're making your profile visible. But I do recommend that if you're comfortable with it, if you're comfortable with sharing your learning, so maybe a tool that you're using and how you've used it in your organization, or how you plan to use it in your future role, learning. So maybe you talk about something that you learned during a course. Maybe you showcase a before and after improvement. So maybe if you have like a visual, kind of like a screenshot, or you create a visual on that, you can showcase that. Or you can talk growth. So maybe it's, hey, these are the 3 mistakes that I made in this project, and here's what I changed using technology to streamline my workflow, or to help me, you know, just kind of like stay organized, whatever that learning is. But these are good topics, and these are just some ideas. But if you can start to think about showing your work, just showing and building it in public, that is going to help your brand, and that is going to help you stand out in a market, a job market that is very competitive. And it's also going to help you stand out even with your employer. If you're currently working now and your employer sees that you are talking about, you know, tools that you're using and technology and things like that, does carry weight. So I would just very much encourage, you know, you all, and you can schedule your posts in advance. So it's one thing that maybe you sit down and you schedule a couple of posts for the month, or 3 posts for the month, and then you schedule them, and then you don't have to think about it. So that would be my recommendation there if you're wondering, well, how, when. That's how I would personally approach it. And then the last big thing that I really want to call out here before I just kind of high level talk about just quick snapshot networking, but I do want to emphasize following the right sources and to try to stop kind of consuming the noise. There's a lot of noise out there. And so when we think about your being the CEO of your career, I personally, if you are able to at this time, block out, I said 30 minutes, but it could even be 15 minutes per week where you call it, market intelligence, and you spend 15 minutes and you maybe subscribe to a couple of newsletters that are in your field to pay attention to the trends, because you want to see what are they talking about as it pertains to hiring, label trends, like what are they talking about with AI. There are also labor trend specific sources as well. So you can subscribe to their newsletters or visit, like Indeed has a hiring lab, Pew Research, the BLS, so Bureau of Labor Statistics. Being just in the know is going to help you as you're making decisions for your career, whether you are employed or not employed. Like, you want to start to spend some time, 15 minutes, maybe make it a goal to reach 30 minutes, but call it your market intelligence to give yourself the resources that you need to help you stay dialed into what is going on. And that can also come in the form of podcasts, that could be LinkedIn voices. So maybe there are certain people in your field, in your industry, that you have a lot of respect for, and just see what they're talking about. And then when it comes to more on like the job searching side of things, if for those of you who are job searching, I would recommend using some AI tools to help you stay organized with your job search. So a few that are external on the market that I listed are like Teal, CareerFlow, JobScan, Hunter.io. They all serve different purposes, but if you need more insights into how those tools can help you, I'd be happy again to talk through any of those tools specifically for those of you who are looking for jobs right now. But outside of that, the last little bit here is building your network. And so I know I touched upon that in the very beginning. And again, I will have a workshop on this as well. But I would very, very highly recommend for you to start reaching out to some people and make it part of your routine, weekly routine or bi-weekly routine, a consistency, a cadence that you can commit to and actually do. But the biggest thing that I would recommend here is it's the three outreach system, where it's one peer, so someone who is in a similar role in your industry or even out of your industry, but in a similar function, a manager level, so +1 of your title, and then someone who is in the space of recruiting. And you can just reach out to these people and you can just say, hey, I saw something that you posted, and feel free to screenshot this if you want. I can also, this will actually also be uploaded in the community as well, so you can leverage these scripts, but you want to start connecting with people. And even if right now it's not for the sake of a job, it's just to start getting people into your ecosystem that are in the spaces and the places where you need to stay dialed into. And so that's where I would say one peer, one manager, one recruiter. And when you can do that, then that for you, you'll start to little by little build your network and have people that, one, it's going to help calibrate your like LinkedIn profile. So you're going to start getting content that's more relevant to you. But two, as you start connecting people and they become your first connections, then you can decide, from there, who are people that maybe you want to reach out to set up coffee chats with, or informational interviews, or just knowing that they're in your ecosystem, maybe at a future state you'll need to reach out to them, but because you're already first connections, there's going to be a higher chance of them engaging with you. So I would very much recommend, just starting to build some sort of system like this. And if they don't respond right away, you can follow up, once or twice. And not everyone is going to respond, and that's okay. But the more that you start to reach out little by little, again, at a cadence that works for you, it's going to help you just longer term with your career, with you being able to stay dialed in, with you being able to stay marketable as well. So with that being said, I know we're coming up on time here and there's a few minutes left. So I want to just see if anyone has any questions that I can answer based on what I've shared today. I know I've given you all a lot of information, but the recording will be available in the community, but I do want to just check in. No, okay. I'm just going through the notes to see if anyone has left any notes. Anything that anyone wants to ask, as in, even if it's outside of this, any questions that you want me to touch on. And otherwise, if not, it's all good, but I'm happy to answer a couple questions.
Is it best to reach out to on questions related to the Heart website or the Heart application? Because I got some questions that I'm having some challenges with. If Sebastian would be the right contact, that would be great.
Yeah. You can send him or send me a message, and then, or feel free to hop into an office hour as well, and then we can chat about any questions that you have too. I'm happy to answer questions there.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I don't see any questions. Okay, so I will leave it at that then, and I do hope that you all have a wonderful day. I hope that this was helpful, and stay tuned for the upcoming sessions, resume workshop, networking. Those will be coming here in the next couple of weeks. Thank you all.